Well, let's all turn around and say hi to Noah. Hi, Noah. I'll be uploading that program later. So let's go ahead and pray and we'll begin. Besides Noah, is there anything else that you would like for us to remember as we begin today? And also, could we have one of you guys volunteer to lead us today before we take requests? That way we can listen. So let's pray for Noah and possibly Austin here, and just everybody's dealing with COVID here. Anything else here today? All right, go ahead.
Dear Father, I just thank you today just for the beautiful morning that was today, Lord, and the beautiful sunshine that's outside. Thank you so much just for the opportunity to come out and learn and be here in person. I pray that you would be with Noah as he has COVID, Lord, that you would just help him to have minor symptoms and keep him safe. I pray that you would be with Austin as well, to keep him safe, and just keep your hand over our whole campus, Lord. That you would just allow us to continue as we have been. That we would have to return to the protocols of last year. I pray that you would be with Dave, be with his family, be with his mom, Lord. I pray that you will be real, you will be real in her life, because I can't imagine the pain that that would cause their family. I pray that your comfort would be real to them, and that you would be here during this time. And you would just be with us now in this class hour. Help us to be attentive and help us to learn. God, give us the teacher of the Spirit. In Jesus' name I pray.
Amen. Thank you. Let's begin once again with our class objectives for today. And first of all, we're going to just start out by reviewing. So recall and experience the 5 R's. So kind of throughout class today, we'll do the experiencing. We'll test your recall here on them just at the beginning. Share ideas from the snare drum videos. I was made aware this morning, as some of you probably saw in the email, I had not pushed all the right buttons to get this. So you could see your course, so I will not expect you obviously to have watched them at this point. So we will move on from that, but we'll get back to that later. Demonstrate correct body and hand position for playing snare drum. We'll get into some of that today. And correctly chant and move to chord rhythm syllables. That's what we'll spend a good amount of our class on, as well as learning to use the meters and rhythm functions handout. I have a number of handouts for you. I'll give you in just a second here. So our class agenda looks like this. Let's begin with those handouts. I'll kind of explain those as we are doing them. But actually, before we do that, let's do the review of the 5 R's. Just see how much you can come up with here to start us off today. And what would our first one be? Relax. Very good. How about the second? Risk. Good. That's the R sound more than an R. W-R sound. W. But third one? Good. So we're thinking of letting the mallet or stick kind of bounce off. And it's actually a bounce on the snare and on the timpani. On the mallets, we have to kind of lift it off more. It doesn't bounce off the wood or the metal like that. But we still want that drawing the sound out of the head of the instrument that we're playing type of feel. And then 4? Rhythm. And finally?
Rhythm.
See, you guys already have one of your final exam questions aced right there. Excellent. Relax, wrist, rebound, rhythm, and rudiments. And now is a little bit more tricky question. Tell me what we want to think about as far as relax. What's the important idea there? Or some of the important ideas?
Like no tension, not like tensing up.
We want to keep fluid and free motion because tension inhibits higher tempos, higher speeds of motion, and also can lead to injuries as well, right? So practical in both cases. Let's see, so relax, wrist. What are we trying to remember with the wrist?
Your elbows and shoulders.
Yep, the motion originates, if we think of it originating from the wrist more than from the elbow or the shoulder. Now there is a little bit of motion. I'm not saying that you gotta feel rigid or anything, but a lot of people, especially beginners, they're comfortable with this. They don't do much of this. Those of you that are instrumentalists, maybe pianists, things like that, maybe you're more used to working with just kind of wrist on down motions. And those smaller coordinations. But especially for a lot of your younger students, that'll be something they kind of have to get used to, just moving their wrists without moving their whole arm. All right, and rebound, what's the thought there? I kind of said it just a minute ago, didn't I? Yeah, instead of pressing the mallet in, we lift the mallet off the head, right? Or let it, have our hand relaxed enough so that it can bounce off. In the case of, you'll feel it with the snare drum sticking a little, it does kind of just bounce off on its own, and it's more like your hand is just being a guide for it as you provide the impetus for the bounce and then kind of recoil with it, all right? Rhythm, what are some of the important things that we need to learn with rhythm here in this particular class? Percussionists need to be masters of rhythm. What's part of that? Getting comfortable with the various meters, good. What else? Being comfortable reading complex rhythms and being able to perform them. And then there was something about extension and division. Remember that comment I made the other day?
Being able to feel the beat in multiple levels.
Yeah, so being able to silently keep track of the speed of the beat over multiple beats, that'd be the extension. And then being able to divide it into all sorts of different numbers. 2s, 3s, 4s, 5s, said all the way up to 8 eventually by the end of the course if you can't already. So we'll be working on that and then kind of back and then jumping around from different levels like that. So those are the main ideas. They're summarized on this sheet just for your memory and study should you need that as exam time comes around. Next, I would like to hand out some rhythm sheets that we'll be using throughout the class. This one this is tonal and rhythm solfege. It explains the movable do, la, bass, minor system, which research has shown is the most effective for teaching audiation. In theory classes here, you will have learned the movable do, bass, minor system. That's good for comparing the tonalities to each other, but not necessarily, it's a different purpose. They're assuming you can already audiate them at this point. So, but for teaching the audiation, what that means, and we're not dealing with as much in this class, but the la bass minor just means that each tonality has a different starting tonic, a resting tone. So major starts on do, minor starts on la, mixolydian starts on so, and by doing that, you only have to teach one set of solfege syllables, and kids can move easily from tonality to tonality without having to do all the little adjustments, which until they can, especially before they read music, it's kind of esoteric to try and make them do all that and understand all that. So it just makes a lot of sense, and it helps you to use what you already know to learn the next thing very quickly and easily that way. So this is a sheet, meters and rhythm functions, that kind of goes over and gives an example of each of the 5 ways that Dr. Gordon classifies the idea of meter. And I think we mentioned this last time, but in the Gordon system, we're not paying attention to the measure level when we label meters. We're paying attention to the beat level because, again, for teaching audiation, which is what this is for, that's where we first focus. So these labels, duple, triple, combined, uneven, intact, these labels all are referring to kind of that beat level, not how many beats are in a measure, like our music theory terms use some of these duple and triple. You've seen those words before. In that what case is talking about how many beats in a measure. Now we eventually hope that our students will develop to the point where they are thinking more at the measure level and feeling that, but that's not where we start with them. So that's just to be clear. That's what these terms are talking about. Now, the terms down the side are the different rhythm functions. How functions means how rhythms sound and feel, and there tend to be similarities between them, even among the meters. So this is one of the really helpful things about the Gordon system for sequentially teaching rhythmic audiation, because these are organized, both the meters and the functions are organized from most easy to audiate to most difficult to audiate for students, at least brought up in a Western culture. Now, if you're brought up in a different culture that focuses on different rhythmic feels, it would be different. But for your students here in the United States, this is kind of an easy to difficult way to audiate both the meters and the types of rhythm patterns that you'll be teaching them. So macrobeats, and all these definitions are down here summarized on the chart. Macrobeat, the strong steady beat. Microbeat is dividing the macrobeat into 2 or 3 parts, and that's all we really do. Then we can divide that further, but all of our Western music moves in 2s and 3s of some sort. And divisions is dividing the microbeats into 2 or 3 parts. So that's kind of that 3rd beat level. So remember we talked about different beat levels. We could think of the measure level as kind of one rhythmic level. The beat level is a second one, and by that I mean macrobeat. Microbeats would be faster yet. Divisions would be faster yet. And we could extend it out more in both directions if we're analyzing or thinking about music different ways as well. Elongations just is notes that are longer than one of the other 3 beat levels. So it could be kind of something that stretches and falls between them, like dotted notes a lot of times, or notes that are 2, 3, 4 macrobeats long. Those would be elongations. Rests, you know what those are. Silence. Syncopation you're familiar with. Syncopation is emphasizing between the macrobeats or microbeats. Da 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 da. Instead of da da right on the beats, it emphasizes between them. Tie isn't the music notation tie necessarily, although it can be. In this context, used just as a sound and a feel, it's when you're connecting rhythm patterns together. So if I said something like ba 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 ba, and I said something like ba 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 ba, and then I connect them together, ba 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 ba. That'd be a tie, where it's kind of it's the idea like if we were writing it out, we probably would use the tie, but again, this is separate from music notation, and it doesn't have to be a written tie. It could just be something that sounds like you're going from one pattern into the other. So that's probably the trickiest for us. We're not used to quite thinking that way. But yes, Caleb.
How do these, I guess, maybe make it easier for percussion versus just using like 1 and 2 under like 1
Yeah,
and
so again, the Gordon system was designed to be, there are 4 or 5 answers to that question. So why don't we just use counting? And we could. The reason that I'm teaching you this system is because it was specifically designed to teach audiation prior to music notation and then connect it to music notation, and to help students not think about where they are in measures, the 1, 2, 3, 4s, as much as what do these rhythms sound and feel like. So it's a different purpose, it's a different emphasis, and it's something that can be used from very early childhood all the way up through adulthood, and isn't relying on them knowing what measures and note values look like and knowing all those kind of technical things that they'll get to later. Also, it's a consistent system. The counting system was developed a lot of places and a lot of ways, and a lot of people do it a lot differently from each other, as maybe you've noticed so far. Now, if you, as a teacher, have a consistent way that you teach your kids to use it, I'm not saying it doesn't work, but it tends to, just for focusing on how rhythms sound and feel, it has an extra layer of information that's not really needed. You don't need to know the number of the beat of the measure to be able to feel and perform the rhythm correctly, and you'll see that as you get into this a little bit. So it's not that it's bad information, it's just extra, and we're wanting them to focus on the sound and feel of it when we're using this system. Another difference from other syllable systems like a Kodai system, it is not based on music notation. Music notation, especially in rhythmic practices, is inconsistent as well. You can have the same sounds written a lot of different ways. We call that n-rhythmic music. You can use different time signatures, you can use triplets, or you can write it in 6/8. You know, there's all these different things you can do. So this just simplifies it, breaks it down to just the sounds. And then you learn to apply those sounds that you can already perform and move to and feel and understand. You connect them with the notation, and then they're actually, you can look at the notation and hear and feel those sounds that you've worked on, instead of just trying to manually kind of figure out where compared to the conductor's beat I'm supposed to play here and sort of in between there. It's from audiation to notation, instead of trying to learn to audiate from notation as the first step. One thing that music psychology has shown us is our vision tends to overwhelm our other senses when we're using vision. So if you teach everything from vision, eventually we'll get there, and we want our kids to be able to learn from vision, from notation, teach themselves new things, right? But if we start there, then there's a lot of levels of things they're having to pay attention to at once that makes them not as successful the higher the music natural ability they have, the music aptitude they have, the more they'll pick it up. The lower music ability, not even music ability, general intelligence, symbol processing ability. There's a bunch of things that go into reading notation. They have to be good at all of them to get it that same way. Here they just have to be able to focus on how rhythm sounds and feels. So that's a long answer, but it's a really good question. It's an important one. I'm glad you asked it, because it's not that I think counting is bad in some way. I learned that way. I taught my students that way before I ran across this system. It's just that I think that this is better for a number of reasons in a music education setting. Now I would, especially when my kids got to high school, I would introduce the counting system to it, because most people use it. You know, I want them to be aware of that. I'd actually have them work through music theory program, like a tutorial program that would lead them through you know, reading and performing rhythms, and it would use the counting system. They get familiar with it there, and I'd answer questions like when we went to before we went to a festival band where I knew the director would be using counting, you know, I'd just explain it. And if they can already audiate the rhythms, who cares what you call it? You know, it's pretty easy to pick up. So there we're just focusing on it a little different way. Some people in the counting system use all numbers, some use a combination of numbers and syllables. So again, it's kind of inconsistent, but if they can already audiate the rhythms, which is what this is for, they'll be ready to do whatever and succeed with whatever system. They'll just have to get used to it. All right, pickup patterns are just what it sounds like. A pickup note is something that comes before the main macro beat. So da 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 da, something that's coming before, if we're in notation, before the first beat of the measure is how we think of it. Just what we learned it as in traditional theory. Okay, so look through this. You'll notice I have syllables, and you'll start to learn those syllables. I'm not going to go through that until we experience them, because one of the most important things to do in teaching audiation is to do sound before symbol, and to do sound before symbol, before theoretical understanding and trying to explain all the intricacies of everything, right? So I'll just have you experience it, get used to it, then we'll come back, and this thinking through this on this sheet is kind of that third step, that theoretical understanding part of it, all right? So for now, just kind of look at it, see how it works. If you can figure some of the stuff out by yourself, great. Look at the definitions. Here I have each of the meters defined. I have a syllable style key to show you what does it mean when there's a bold syllable or a lowercase syllable. And this is just my own system for kind of writing these words out like this, and one that I found kind of works well with this Gordon system. So I've added a little bit too, tweaked a little bit. Like I said, to another class. I actually had a chance to take a number of classes during my master's from Dr. Gordon, who was a lifelong music ed researcher and music psychologist, and he has just a number of really helpful ideas and publications for teaching audiation, for testing music aptitude, for creating a music learning theory that you can base a music curriculum around that sequentially helps students learn audiation, all those types of things. That was his life work. And so the Lord allowed me to take 3 different classes from him at Michigan State. He was up there doing some research with their brain imaging machinery, or whatever the term would be, that their medical department had, that was really kind of cutting edge at the time in the year 2000, 99, around there. And so he was trying to test things out with music and what that did in the brain and all those type of things. And so he was up there teaching classes. He was actually from South Carolina here at the time, University of South Carolina, but he was up there at the time I was going through. So I got to talk with him at length about a lot of this stuff, and some of the changes I've made. You know, I ran those past him even, and saw, you know, what he thought about them, since he was the one that made it all up. I didn't want to just be missing the point and changing stuff unnecessarily. So, and then I also made some additions. So if you look at this tonal and rhythm syllable sheet here, you'll notice the top half is tonal solfege. The bottom half explains the principles of this Gordon rhythm system here. So if you watch the video, you've already heard some of this stuff, but then you'll notice in the blue with Townsend additions. I did this because I used it all the way up through high school, and I wanted there to be options for any music that they would run across to audiate or to read or anything. So I kind of extended it one more level of speed is what it is, kind of one more beat level. So things that were written as 16th triplets and written as 32nd notes, you know, there would be syllables for those two. So I used just the same type of ideas as he did, but extended it a little bit further. So let's look down through these really quickly. First of all, syllables represent all sounds in duple, triple, combined, uneven, and intact meters. I won't define those terms all yet. Duple means divided into two parts, the macrobeats divide into two, triple divide into three, we'll get to the others later. It uses the syllable do for all macrobeats. So whatever you would conduct or kind of clap along to or pat along to, we call that the macrobeat. And just so you know, the younger the student is, the faster the beat level will be macrobeats for them. So often what feels like macrobeats or microbeats for us, da 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 da, that's what they would pat along to because they move faster. Their little legs are shorter, they move faster. So that's the beat level they're going to originally connect with, and we have to kind of start there and then gradually help them to feel longer and longer. Again, elongations is like the fourth level down of difficulty. So if we start them with what's comfortable for us, they won't succeed as well. But if you have junior high and high school students, it'll be more typical to you. So it uses do for all macrobeats. The system uses do and de, which is like D-E-H, but again, in America, we tend to kind of close that sound and make it more D-A-Y type of sounding. So do-de is the way it comes out instead of do-de. It's Latin vowels, but that's just kind of practical. So we'll call it do and do-de for microbeats and duple and combined meters. Combined just means where you're going back and forth between dividing the beat into twos and dividing the beat into threes. So it would be music that has regular eighth notes and eighth note triplets in the same piece, kind of going back and forth, is the way you could understand that notation. It uses do, ta, de, ta, so the ta is that division level now, so macrobeats, microbeats, division, for divisions in duple and combined meters. So do is the steady beat, do, de is the microbeats, and do to data would be like the division level. So let's experience each of those here real quick. Go ahead and stand up. All right, so one thing that's really helpful to help your students learn to audiate, to be good at rhythms, they have to imagine the feeling of moving in the meter and then superimpose the rhythms on that. If they can't move in the meter, there's no way they can imagine it. And that's one thing that's more recent that people understand. Instead of trying to approach through a mental, technical, cognitive way to get them to be successful rhythm is about motion. It's about moving in time. And so if you can, early childhood music, elementary music, they've known this for years. Once we get to secondary music, sometimes we tend to think, oh, everything needs to come through the brain somehow, and in a way it does, because your brain's all throughout your whole body. It's called your nervous system. But let's go ahead and, so what I was gonna say. So a large beat motion, especially if you can get them changing their center of gravity, that'll help them get a good sense of macrobeat. So we're just gonna, for convenience sake, stay right where you are, but step from side to side in place like this. And just stay kind of relaxed as you do it. So we'll call that our macrobeats. Now let's just say do's as we move from side to side. Ready, go. Do, 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 do. Macrobeats, okay? Now, let's take our hands and pat gently on our laps, twice that tempo. So, ta, 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 ta. Let's say do-day to that speed. Ready, go. Do-day, 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 do-day. All right, now it's a test to see how coordinated you are. Let's start with 4 macrobeats of do's, and then add 4 macrobeats of do-days with our hands. So start this way first so we don't run into each other. Ready, go. Do, do, do. Okay, you're backwards. Okay, let's try it again. This way first. Ready, go. Do, 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 do. Do-day, 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 do-day. Look at you guys. You're great. Okay, not all your students will be able to do that, to tell you the truth. And if they can't, they have no chance of being good at rhythms. I'll just tell you that. Because they can't imagine what they can't do, all right? It's about physical sensation that you imagine and put rhythms into. All right, let's add the third beat level. So let's practice saying it once. Do-to-data, ready, say. Do-to-data, 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 do-to-data. Good, 4 of each. Ready, go. Do, 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 do. Do-day, 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 do-day. Do-to-data, 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 do-to-data. Yeah, that's it. Go ahead and have a seat. So that's the first three rhythm functions down the list: macrobeat, macrobeat division for duple meter. And we'll get to other meters and we'll get to other functions later. Going down our list here, the Gordon system uses do, da, and D for triple meter. So instead of do, day, it would be do, da, dee, do, da, dee. Notice none of those microbeat syllables are the same. That's one of the things that is good about the Gordon system. Each function has its own set of sounds. So the do, day that determines duple meter is different from do, da, dee. That it doesn't use any of those same sounds in there. And then the tas are the same, except they're not what you use to figure out the meter. They're to audiate the meter. So at that meter level, macrobeat, microbeat, that's what you need for figuring that out. They're going to be unique in that way. All right. Let's see. So and then putting tas in after that would be do da dee divisions. Do ta da ta dee ta do ta da ta dee ta. So let's practice saying each of those once. Ready and go. Do da dee do da dee do da dee. And the tas. Do ta da ta dee ta do ta da ta dee ta do ta da ta dee ta do ta da ta dee ta. Yeah, you may need to practice that a little bit. Get your tongue used to that. With my students, I was just kind of start out really slow and then speed it up until half of them start giggling. But it comes pretty fast. Even with Mighty Mites there, they get that pretty fast. And then let's see, looking down one more level here. Okay, so do to da ti. The Gordon system uses, now when you move to what we think of as asymmetrical meters, where the macrobeats change lengths, but the microbeats stay the same, would be one example, or these would be our 5/8, 7/8, sometimes even 8/8. You'll it technically has the same note values as 4/4, but you're feeling it totally different than 4/4. So anything that has that uneven feel to it, I just call it uneven meter. Dr. Gordon had a different word, but he actually said he liked this one better because he did his a long time ago and then wished he changed it because it was kind of very Western music centric, and once he got to know more musics around the world, it kind of sounded like that. But he called them usual and unusual, which for us it's usual and unusual, for other people it's not. So uneven makes a lot of sense even to little kids because you feel like you're limping when you're moving back and forth on asymmetrical meters that way. All right. Let's see. So for that feel, he switches from the D sound to the B sound. So do bay instead of do day, and do bobby, which cracks all the little kids up, I'll tell you. That if you're putting them back to back, do bay, do bobby, it's that type of feel. And we'll use those and move to those later. That's that uneven meter we get to later on. The Gordon system holds the starting syllable for the duration of sounds if the rhythm's elongated. So do, day, do. Anything that holds out longer than a macrobeat or macrobeat, you just keep your voice going, but keep saying that same syllable. And then during the rest, the corresponding syllables audiated in silence. Do, day, do. And I'll show you a system where I have them kind of say the notes in rest, then whisper the rest, and then just audiate the rest. That I found works really well once they're reading rhythms, because that's always something everybody struggles with is rest, right? Because there's nothing you're doing. Well, we give them something to do, but we just do it kind of in stages. And then the two things I added, although not specified by the Gordon system, an additional beat level, which I call subdivisions, so this is faster than the divisions, may be produced by placing ga syllables between the divisions. So now we have do ta day ta, do ta day ta, do ga ta ga day ga ta ga, do ga ta ga day ga ta ga. That'd be for like 8 on a beat, usually written as 30-second notes. That you could use that level for that, and we'll practice those later. Also, triple divisions is something that in percussion we got to even within the first year book, but a lot of other musicians don't get to as much, so I just made up something for those. Triple divisions may be performed using the syllables ta, well, not ta, da. I should have replaced the T with a D there. Da and ka in the place of ta syllables. So instead of do ta day ta, we could have do da ka day da ka, do da ka day da ka. So do day, do day, do to day to do day, do to day to do day to do to day to do. So it's kind of 2s and 3s at the division level, which again we do in percussion fairly quickly compared to other people. So I just added those on there. We won't do as much with my additions. We'll focus on just getting the basic system down. But let me pass out now. This is a set of rhythm patterns that are organized according to meter. So it starts with macrobeats, then microbeats, then divisions, and every time you get to the next level, it includes the ones before. So take a look through there. It has all the syllables written out on the first 4 pages for you. Then it has the exact same patterns without syllables so that you can practice on the next 4 pages. And I'll give you a set of rhythms like this for each of the meters, and this will be what we're performing on the rhythm test for midterm off of these sheets here, okay? You actually, for your practice from now until Friday, once I show you the stuff on the drum here, you can practice just doing these patterns on the drum, and we'll get started with our book stuff pretty soon. All right, that's all the handout stuff I need to go over. Let's go to our snare drum stuff now. And we're gonna take just a minute here to go get our practice pads. We'll be right back, Noah. So come on with me, let's take a quick field trip. All right, so go ahead and stand up now. And just see how I'm gonna move this so you guys can see better. Just see how the height is on your stand. Again, put it about 4 to 6 inches below your waist. Good. Now, let's talk about, if you had a chance to watch the snare drum videos, I'd be quizzing you about a bunch of this, but instead I will tell you. So let's talk about holding our snare drum sticks and getting our proper stroke and all those good things. So go ahead and take one in your dominant hand. I'll use my right hand here as an example. The first thing we need to know is where to contact the stick. So if we imagine we're going to split the stick into 3 parts, we're going to hold it right at that first part, right at that first connection point of the 3, so to speak. All right, so about 1/3 of the way up the stick toward the tip, if we want to think of it that way. And we're going to put our thumb, the flat part of our thumb, on one side, and then we're going to put our first knuckle crease across from it, so that it kind of holds between the thumb and the first knuckle crease there. Now you'll notice that my thumb tip is lined up with my knuckle instead of ahead of it or behind it. That will let the stick form an easy rotation motion right between the tip of my finger, the tip of my thumb and the knuckle of my finger here. All right, now what do I do with the rest of my fingers? We're just gonna let them kind of wrap gently around to the side. We're not gonna grab the stick with them because we want it to be able to move in our hand up and down. The second finger kind of rests on it a little bit. The rest just kind of go near it but don't really do anything. If you put them on it, it'll keep it from bouncing. They'll do that. So they just kind of, and this is one of the tricky things, since they're not grabbing it, they want to kind of stick out, but we don't want that tension. We just want to let them rest by the side. All right, so now think of your thumb, instead of pushing out this way like you would for holding a string instrument bow, some of those, you have it this way. For us, we want it back in this way because we want as much of that fleshy part of our thumb to be along the side of the stick. They'll just give us better contact with the stick and more security, okay? So just kind of think of pushing the knuckle back into the stick a little bit with your thumb, like right across from that first finger. All right, so what we've talked about so far, find about 1/3 of the way up the stick, that's called the fulcrum. Fulcrum just means the balance point or the rotating point. And we're going to place it between our flat part of our thumb, our first knuckle of our first finger, our other fingers wrap around gently, and then we want the back of our hand and the top and bottom of our hand to be parallel with the floor, as opposed to like this, okay? So turn your hand so that the back of it is parallel to the floor, all right? If you are holding it about 1/3 of the way up, you should have about 1 inch, depending on the size of your hand, 1 inch, maybe a little more, maybe a little less off the back. My hands are bigger, so it's a little bit less. All right. So I would go, yeah, just a little bit further up there, Katie. That looks good. Amanda, you could probably back up just a little bit. And the rest look good. Yeah, that's it. Now, just get used to moving the stick up and down from the wrist, like we did the other day. So we're just going to bend our wrist, lift it up, put it down, like that. And the stick is not a straight extension out from our wrist, it's kind of going to the side if it follows the natural curve of our hand here. So if you did put your fingers on the stick, it should be in your hand about the angle that your fingers would fall on the stick. So it should be coming out about the middle of this fleshy part on the back of your hand there, right? If it's too far up here or too far under your hand, it won't have the ability to rotate right in your hand, okay? Now, let's go ahead and do the drill we did the other day where we're thinking of kind of flicking the water droplets off our fingers. Just hold your stick in your other hand for a second and do that flick, flick, and it's just from the wrist, not from the elbow, just moving the wrist. Good. Now, pretend you have the stick in there and place your thumb against the side of your first finger and do that same thing. Down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. Good. Now actually put the stick in there and do that against the head, like this. Can you let all your fingers relax? There you go. So it's down, up, down, up. Go ahead and join me. Flat part of your finger, flat part of your thumb against the side of the stick. Just on the tip of your thumb. Yeah, good job. And just have your hand as a little bit of tension here, but everything else is just nice and relaxed. One teacher describes it as holding a baby bird. Yeah, it's going to fly away if you don't have a little bit of pressure, but you don't want to squish the poor thing, right? So I thought that was kind of a good analogy there. All right, let's do steady beats, smacker beats together again. Ready, go. Yeah, that's great. Now, the more careful you are to make sure you're always playing like that, the quicker you'll get better. So be your own teacher. Review the things that we talked about with yourself, and you'll see them demonstrate again on the videos. Write down reminders to yourself if you need, and then I'll also remind you in class. All right, see if you can build that same shape and hand position with your opposite hand. Just one stick at a time for right now. We'll put them together in a minute. Right now I need you to be able to focus all your attention on one hand at a time here. Yeah. Okay, so somebody tell me one of the things we're trying to remember. Relax, good. As far as all those little instruction points about how to hold. Thumb kind of bent back toward the stick and the flat part of your thumb against the side of the stick. What about your first finger? Where does that contact the stick? First knuckle, right? Now some of you it'll kind of want to slip up into the second knuckle. Try to keep it in that first one. It'll give, if it gets in the second one, it kind of hits the back of your hand as you're trying to do things more. We want a little more room for it to be able to freely bounce up and down and move within your hand. All right. So where on the stick do we make the fulcrum point? Third of the way up toward the tip. Right. Good. And what are we doing? We talked about relax. What are the other two ideas that go along with our stroke? Bend from the wrist and rebound each of the strokes up. So it starts up, goes down, and comes back up. All right, let's do the 3 steps with our left hand now. Flick the water droplets. Choo, choo, choo. Just bending from the wrist. Good. Now put your thumb against the side of your finger and do the same thing. Now place the stick in your hand and do the same thing on the head. Your non-dominant hand usually feels way more awkward at this. If it doesn't, great for you, yay, that's awesome. And it will tend to do wacky things. Like on some of you I saw it trying to bend this way instead of this way. It'll just do all this. So what you want to do is you want to use your dominant hand kind of as a template and try to make your non-dominant hand match it as much as you can. All right, so now let's hold both of our sticks at the same time. Third of the way up, between the thumb and the first knuckle. Other fingers curve around gently, and let's start with. I'll do backwards so that you can copy me. Let's start with your right hands, and then just alternate right to left. So keep it about 6 inches off the head, down and up with each stroke. Ready, go. Don't be in any hurry. Just look down at your hands and focus on your hand position. Focus on relax, wrist, and rebound. your sticks in one hand. Now when working with percussionists, I found this is a very convenient strategy so that they don't just absentmindedly bang at things all the time. So if we're not playing, we put both sticks in one hand. Kids, nothing. When I was in college band, I find myself, embarrassed myself by doing that. Dr. Turner looked back at me, he's talking, and I'm sitting here, you know, just, you got sticks in your hand, they want to hit something, you know. So anyway, good. All right, now try and do the same thing again without me giving you any of the steps. Get in playing position. Oh, as far as the rest of our body, I didn't mention the rest of our body. All of you have been through class that talks about choral posture at this point, right? Like standing up for singing position, it's the same thing, all right? So just feet a little bit apart, knees relaxed, everything centered above, torso centered above, everything relaxed. And then we're just going to take our hands from our sides, lift them up, turn them over. Right. 2, ready, go. Combine what we're learning here about our snare technique with what we were learning earlier about duple meter rhythms. So now, and this is the way I would start my students too, long before we read anything, we would just do call and response patterns back and forth, focusing on our hand position. Again, the more things you give them at once, the less they're able to do any of them, right? So let's keep that slower macro beat because that'll make it so that we can do 3 beat levels and right from the first day. 2, ready, I'll say a pattern, you say it back, then you play it and say it back. So we'll do it 3 steps, then we'll take out the second step eventually. Ready, go. Do, day, say. Do, day, do. Now play, do, day. So we'll just keep doing that over and over. I'll say a pattern, you'll say it back, and then we'll say it and play it back. And I do want you to say it while you play. Get used to doing both at the same time. That'll help you once you're starting to trying to read these patterns and figure out how to get them all to work together. All right, do, day, do, day, do, do. Do, day, do, day, do, do. Focus on your hand position. Do, day, do, day, do. Do, day, do, day, do. Since you guys are so awesome in advance, let's throw in a 3rd beat level. Let's do some divisions. Do to datas. Ready, listen. Do to data do day, do to data do. Do to data do day, do to data do. Alright, so I'm seeing pretty good remembering. The faster we get, the more you're going to want to kind of condense in here. Alright, so get in our position again one more time. I'll say it, then you play it. Do to data do day, do to data do. Yeah, that's the idea. Now let's just keep going in flow, and we're going to cut out the second step now. Just go right from me saying to you saying play. Ready, listen. Do to data do day, do day, do. Do to data do to data do to data do. Now I'm just kind of watching you as you play here. Doing pretty well with remembering things. Taylor, it looks like the things that you're forgetting are your thumb wants to kind of gradually go out like that, and then your hands want to come in right close to your body. That's pretty common. Make sure that there's some distance. I didn't mention this, distance between you and the pad. You don't want to be right up against it because that'll make kind of tension and pressure moving back that way. So again, hands straight up, turned over, center of the drum, and then move your body accordingly. So it should be back, 8-10 inches from the pad there. Do to data do to data do day do. Do to data do to data do. All right, yeah, you guys got the idea. Anybody ready to make up a pattern for the rest of us like I've been doing? 4 macro beats long, do's, do days, or do to datas. You can do all of one, or you can mix them up like I've been doing. Caleb, you want to give us one?
I actually have a question.
Oh, okay,
So,
sure.
when we're doing the alternating, do we ever re-strike one, or is it
We will,
always
not
just
for a
one?
while. Yeah, that's what the rudiments are. They're different sticking patterns. But for right now, just practice
That's like
alternating
alternate.
everything. Yep.
Okay.
And actually, in snare drum music, as you're learning new patterns, they'll actually write R's and L's for rights and lefts under them, and you'll see some of that in your book as we go along too. But for right now, everything's alternated. That's the basic stroke. That's kind of that you only do doubles for certain reasons, but everything's alternated. All right, you want to make up a pattern?
Sure.
All right, give us a pattern and we'll play it back. You can play it and say it, or you can just say it, whatever you can do.
Do, day, do, day, do, day, do.
Okay, so that'd be do, day, do, to, day, to, do, day, do. And what music skill am I having you guys do now by asking you to make up your own patterns? Improvising, that's right. And every time you start with improvising, you give guidance. I'm just kind of throwing you guys into it because I know you already can audiate these rhythms, and it's just a matter of learning the words to put with them. But you know, at first with really young kids, I'd say like change one thing about my pattern. You know, I'd kind of scaffold it for them, and then usually they mess up the words. So then I would say it back between each one, and then the class would repeat it back, that type of thing. So just FYI, that there are a couple intermediate steps that I'm not going to always do with you guys here. But all right, who else can improvise a pattern for us today? Amanda? Teaching point, if you don't end it with a macro beat, it's harder for them to come in, right? But that's okay, just realize that's more advanced. Okay, that's a good place. Any questions about the duple-meter syllables, the practicing on your practice pads, any of those type of things? Your basic playing technique. It looks like you guys are doing a great job with all that, so keep it up. We will start practice time. If you look in Canvas, and my computer won't stick on me. If you look in Canvas, you'll see there's a practice record sheet there that you can start using, and we'll take your first practice time next Monday in class. And next Monday is actually, I just realized, Labor Day, so we'll take your practice time next Friday. No, give it to me Monday, but just by Monday email.
Okay.
Let's do it that way, okay? So I'll see you all Friday. Look into your syllabus for what you're supposed to practice. A lot of it's this stuff that I handed out here today. You keep those for the semester. You'll take the practice pads to whatever room and eventually take snare drums to practice when it gets close to our test, so you can get used to how they feel. To whatever rooms in the music building, I'm saying that. To your room. Yeah.
Just start playing at 1 in the morning.
That's right. That would make friends
Dude.
really quickly. Yes, exactly. Practice snare right when everybody's going to
I
sleep.
don't have the room right now, so I can do it.
Have a great week, everyone.
You too.
I'm right next door to Jacob, my LA, so. Yeah.
Jacob Rodriguez?
Yeah.
I know him.
I do too, sort of.
Austin, can you hang on for a sec, please?
Yeah.
Thanks.